Good afternoon. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today. I'm Shagun Mehrotra from Columbia University. And before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that what I'm presenting here is a collaborative effort of over 100 scholars from 50 cities around the world. And I hope that I am speaking to future collaborators in this audience, because we are constantly making every effort to reach out to a variety of constituencies to build knowledge to inform climate change. I'm going to present here some of my experience in developing a state-of-the-knowledge effort on climate change in cities that I have had the opportunity to collaborate on with some of my colleagues who are here. Dr. Cynthia Rosenzweig is here, and Professor Martha Barata from Rio is also here, and they are also presenting parts of this in various other forums and roundtables, various other sections of this effort. This is really thought of as an effort to bring state-of-the-knowledge to policymakers on climate change. But as we have begun to focus, especially since Copenhagen, there's been a lot of focus on climate change and as it affects cities. And as you heard in the plenary today and several sessions during the course of the day, and you will hear tomorrow, there's a lot of emphasis on climate change and as it affects cities. But I want to highlight three structural transformations that are happening in cities that are going to reshape the way we thought of cities, the way we study cities, the way scholars write about cities and practitioners build cities. And fundamental to this is in the next 40 years, we're going to see a doubling of city population. And most of this, 3 billion people will be added to our cities around the world, most of them in developing country conditions, and mostly in already sprawling slums. And so while we talk, and I stand here in this wonderful part of Sao Paulo, there is a whole different world out there that is walking into cities. And that is putting tremendous pressure on existing infrastructure deficits around the world. And as we speak, in the next 20 years, we'll see $40 trillion be spent in the infrastructure sectors. And if that takes into account risks associated with climate change, we can have dramatic gains without radically increasing our expenses for adaptation and mitigation. So that is one major change that is happening. Another major change that is happening, and I pose these as three critical challenges because climate change is reshaping our cities, and it's reshaping our cities in the sense that in the past climate was taken as a constant, but it's increasingly with climate change has become a variable, and cities have to respond to that, as do city related scholarship. But many theorists and practitioners who study cities are focused on pre-climate cities. And the third is the rise of emerging markets. Countries like Brazil, India, China are rapidly growing, and also they are increasingly leading global growth. And with that, as poor countries lead global growth, the voice of these poor people who are walking into cities is increasingly going to become an important part of how we think about global issues, including climate change. So it's unlikely that our pedagogical efforts are going to have any meaningful long-term impact if we don't really squarely pose the urban poor at the center of any of our efforts. In response, my colleagues and I have been trying to work on building a scientific basis for action. And what I mean by that is really, major part of the global emissions come from cities, and the numbers we can debate, but there's a lot that can be achieved simply through cities while nation states are negotiating. And there's ample research in the area of climate change, but there are specific attributes of cities which often get neglected, and some of which are that they house half the global population, but in highly concentrated arrangements which are along coasts or river deltas, which are very, very vulnerable to climate change. They also have high density of economic activity, and these make cities a very important center which require very specialized attention. They also have specific climate phenomena like climate domes, which create local urban heat island effects, but local air pollution issues. And much of that gets neglected in the broader climate research. So this ARC3 effort, which is the Assessment Report on Climate Change in Cities, focuses to really establish an ongoing research effort which builds the state-of-the-art of knowledge for policymakers to make informed choices. In this effort, we have had 100 scholars from 50 cities, but they are also a combination of adaptation specialists and mitigation specialists. So we are not on one or the other side of the debate, and it's wonderful to see the guidelines that Sao Paulo has put out. Very important that the title actually says guidelines for adaptation and mitigation, because it's really bringing the co-benefits and the synergies of doing this together as well. We also have an interdisciplinary team of climate scientists, physicists, structural engineers, planners, economists, geographers, a host of disciplines that are coming together. And I would like my colleagues to reflect on some of the challenges of bringing multiple disciplines into a room. Each come with their own pedagogical biases, and it has been quite a learning experience to actually try to work together. To focus the research squarely on the needs of the cities, we conducted an assessment and asked city leaders really what kind of knowledge were they in search of as they prepare action plans for climate change. And so we have made a concerted effort to respond to that assessment, which got organized in the following way. What we did was we put all the science together in the first section, as you see up there. And in that section, we articulate a risk framework which again tries to bring three communities of scholars and practitioners together to define risk and then to respond to risk specifically related to climate change. And then we articulate what the state of the knowledge on articulating climate hazards is. This is all the observed and projected data for temperature, precipitation, sea level rise kind of things. So that's the science section. And then there's a broad section which looks at all the urban sectors. So we look at energy, transport, water, public health. And within each of these, we look at what are the climate risks, what are the mechanisms for adaptation, mitigation, and policy options. And each of these are illustrated through city case studies to ground this generic knowledge into city conditions, because at the end of the day, all the actions are going to happen in a contextualized social, economic, legal setting. And for that to take roots, you really have to see and observe and decipher from the experience and struggles of other grounded cases that are trying to respond to these conditions. But cities don't operate in these sectors, don't operate in isolation, they work together. So we try to bring these issues together in land use and governance, which is the last section of this assessment. I'll just briefly talk about the risk framework. It's an area that is close to my heart, and I think is a fundamental contribution in this area of work. Natural scientists were doing fantastic work, especially in the IPCC, if you look at that, and my colleagues are here. Cynthia herself has led some of the fundamental research in this area, especially around cities. And here they were doing fantastic work on articulating hazards. So looking at temperature trends, precipitation, sea level rise. But when the same external forcings hit New York versus Lagos, where Lagos has 70% of its population in slums and twice the population of New York City, but a quarter or maybe even a tenth of the annual budget, then the implications for the citizens, for the assets are radically different. So it's a combination and interaction of external forcings, which is the climate science, and the efforts of social scientists who have been articulating the vulnerabilities of the poor, but also economists who are saying what this means for the economy. And then there's a third leg of policymakers who are crafting responses, institutional and legislative efforts to reduce or battle these external forcings. It is a combination of these efforts or lack of them that actually shapes the risk. And we are delighted that increasingly this is becoming the norm for risk assessment in cities and is getting absorbed as a metric for articulating what risks cities are facing. Just briefly, here are some of the projections that were being done for regions, continents, but now with excellent effort at researchers at Columbia and many other places, including Godot Institute of Space Studies Center at New York. There is a lot of work on articulating these projections specifically for cities. What does this mean for my city? That's what a mayor wants to know. And in our book, we have 12 odd cities, but this kind of data is available for cities around the world. Every city we can name in this room and few more. Because weather data has been collected over the last 100 years and there's a lot of information available. So information is not really a barrier to action. I just want to outline here three key takeaways, one of which is that climate risk and response information is amply available, yet it's not getting integrated as much as we would think and require in long-term city plans and investments. And there scholars can play a key role in collaborating with policymakers to bridge this, to really craft a knowledge base that informs long-term plans and that it doesn't get left in grand rhetoric alone. Because, you know, there is so much information that is readily available that it need not take too much to actually deploy it. But in this process, research has to focus on building expertise, not just a laundry list of you know, what we know. Because really, as Dreyfus and Dreyfus, they're two philosopher and chemist, I think, at Stanford, who have articulated that expertise is not knowing the rules. It is knowing when to actually break them in some way, but discretionary application of contextualized knowledge. And that's going to come only by using what these sort of assessments are putting together in tough city conditions. And so that, to some extent, is the aim of our effort, but there are many other efforts out there, and we hope we can collaborate or partner with many of you who are leading such efforts. Just to sum it up, what we thought was one way of bringing this sort of knowledge to practitioners was through a global 4-track approach where a document like this, which puts together the state of the knowledge, is one starting point. But when it comes to really a country condition, using simple risk frameworks like we discussed a little earlier, you could do a very quick assessment of urban areas all over Brazil, for example. And when it comes to acting in large cities like Sao Paulo, then you need really kind of efforts like what Sao Paulo is doing now, which is really to set up a panel of all kinds of experts, both within government and within the scholarly community, to constantly work together to articulate this sector by sector and rethink how we do our business as usual. And last but not the least by any measure, is really building the next generation of policymakers and building pedagogical bases that can face 21st century problems and move away from you know, our old city constructs, which have pretty much been around sprawl and the car. And there I am involved in an effort at the New School in New York now, where there's going to be a new program on environmental policy and sustainability management. And efforts like that, and like those of the Earth Institute at Columbia, are really a starting point for us to think through. But I was delighted to learn that 3 universities are here, along with USP here in Sao Paulo, with students who are trying to work these things through in settings like these. And these are great opportunities to further explore new pedagogical arrangements. Thank you very much.